welcome back to my channel and welcome back to this Halloween special, which was voted for by you on my Instagram. So last year I made this epic 3-tier Halloween cake. It had cobwebs, chocolate spiders, a dripping bloody mouth, a pumpkin top, a witch's hat, all sorts. I didn't get to record it for YouTube. However, I firstly recorded the pumpkin layer last week, so if you haven't already, check that out on my channel. And then I asked if you wanted to see another technique that was on the cake. So here it is. Most of you voted for the cobweb effect, which is quite interesting because this effect has been around for quite a while. It's basically making cobwebs from marshmallows, so I'm going to show you how to do exactly that. But I'm also going to add a couple more techniques. The first technique is the kind of concrete shaded grey buttercream effect. So I've yet to show this effect on my YouTube channel, so this is going to be a kind of 2-in-1 tutorial. But what I have here to start off with is a 6-inch ready crumb coated chocolate cake. So you can see that I've crumb coated it in chocolate buttercream, and what I've also done is got the leftover chocolate buttercream already in a bowl. So when it comes to colouring buttercream grey or black, which I'm sure a lot of you are going to do at this time of year, it's better to start off with a darker shade of buttercream, hence why I've kept the buttercream chocolate coloured. So before I put on the second coating of buttercream onto this cake, I'm going to colour the remaining buttercream grey. So like I said, I've got my chocolate buttercream. You can find the recipe of my chocolate cake and chocolate buttercream over on my channel, but what I'm going to do is actually add some black food colouring. When it comes to black food colouring, I get a lot of questions and people asking why it's not going black or why does it have a purple tint. The honest reason is it's very hard to get a true black buttercream colour. So I actually prefer using powdered colours. This is actually a chocolate colouring. So it's very intense and therefore you don't need as much. And it comes in powder form. I have used the gel food colorings for black, but some of them create a kind of purple tint, or some of them create a more bluey tint. It's never quite just black, because of course, black is just a mixture of all colors. So I'm gonna go with a little bit of this black powder straight into the buttercream. I'm going to go in with about 1/4 teaspoon at first, and see how that colors. And I'll give it a good mix. So depending on the powder or colour that you're using, depends on the amount you need. I of course like to go in with small amounts because you obviously can't take out any colour once you've put it in. So I'm going to see how each stage of adding the colour affects the buttercream. So it's already becoming more of a grey tone than a brown tone, but I do think I can add a little more. So I'll go in with a little bit more colour, mix that through, and then see how that turns out. So I may have mentioned this on one of my other videos, but the reason why I like hand beating the buttercream is because you're actually knocking out air at the same time as mixing in the colour. So it makes the second layer of buttercream a lot easier to apply because you don't have that many air bubbles in it. But even if you were leaving your buttercream white, I would still recommend hand beating it before you apply the second coating. So the buttercream is now this beautiful grey colour. It does actually have a hint of brown. I personally don't mind that. That's obviously come from the chocolate that was in there before. And of course, if you're using different colours, whether it's gel or powder, you're probably going to get a slightly different shade. But what's most important is that you just want one shade of grey. So when I first saw the concrete effect, I thought it was kind of marbling different shades of grey, but it's not. It's all about the technique that comes after this stage, which I'll get to. But once you're happy with the colour, you can now apply it directly to the cake. So as usual, I'm going to take my palette knife and go over with a generous layer of buttercream, so at least 1/2 centimetre thick all the way around the sides. And then I'll add some buttercream on the top. So you've probably heard me say this before, but it's important before you scrape the sides to make sure the top is nice and flat, otherwise you won't fill these top corners with buttercream enough. So just using the turntable to rotate the cake, I'm going to get this really nice flat top, and now I can get my side scraper and make the sides nice and smooth. So the next stage is the important bit, and this is where we're going to achieve the concrete effect. I'm now going to put this in the freezer. Usually I say it doesn't matter if the cake is in the fridge or the freezer, but to get the concrete effect, it has to be in the freezer, and you'll see why. So I'm going to put this in for a good 20 minutes to get it really, really cold. And as you've noticed, I've left the top edges raw because I'm going to freeze it anyway, so I might as well achieve a nice sharp corner at the same time. So after the cake being in the freezer, the second coat of buttercream is rock solid, which is exactly what you want for the next stage. So firstly, I'm going to trim off the top corners using a knife. Because the buttercream is cold, it's going to be really easy to trim. So I'm carefully going to go piece by piece and just literally lift off the buttercream. This is an excellent trick to getting sharp corners. So what might happen is when you cut off corners like I just did, some shading might start to occur, and it's this which we actually want to achieve now. So this is basically the reaction of scraping on the buttercream when it's cold. Something in, I think, the fat of the butter basically starts to create this shading effect and therefore creates this concrete look. I keep calling it concrete, but this probably won't look like concrete. It will just like create this like awesome shading on the buttercream. It's the same effect either way. So with my scraper, what I'm going to do is gently scrape on the surface of the buttercream. Now, of course, I wouldn't usually do this, but this is how you get this kind of shading to start happening. And basically, the more I go round, the more this shading happens. So I'm not adding different shades of buttercream, it's purely happening just because of the coldness from the freezer and the scraper. So this technique actually works with any colour, whether you want to do it purple or green or orange to keep it within Halloween themes. I've obviously gone with dark because I wanted a dark base for the rest of the decorations. But you can see all the different shades that have appeared on the cake surface. So I love this technique in itself. What I'm just going to do is clean off the top corners. Because I've scraped around, it's obviously affected them. And so the next step is to apply the cobwebs, which I'll show you in a minute, but first I want this cake to be really cold again, because otherwise when I apply the cobwebs to it, it's going to affect the shape of the cake. So I'm going to put this back in the freezer for another 5 minutes and get the cobwebs ready. Okay, so here is the fun and messy part. It's making the marshmallow cobwebs. So what I did is I emptied a whole bag of marshmallows into a metal bowl, put it over some simmering water, so a low heat, for about 15 minutes and just left it. And what happens is that it all melts together, and when you try to mix it, and you can kind of see where the cobwebs start to happen, the marshmallow just completely melts and still has this kind of stringiness to it, which is what forms the cobweb effect. So a little tip, some people advise to do this with gloves on. I have done this in the past, but I actually found that the plastic gloves stick to the marshmallow more. So I do it with my bare hands, but I've got a jug of very warm water here so I can clean my hands directly after and get all the sticky marshmallow off. So without further ado, I'm going to go straight in and pick up some marshmallow. I mean, this stuff's just amazing. You'll see what happens when I stretch it out. It really looks like a cobweb. So obviously be careful that it's not too hot. But I'm going to stretch it out, and when I'm happy with that effect, put it onto the cake. And I'm basically going to wrap the marshmallow around the cake, and it will just continuously spread out. So these like massive bits where it gets all translucent looks amazing. I'm going to go on the top, around the sides. So I've actually created like a big clump over here. Kind of looks like a spider's nest and it's freaking me out. So I'm going to leave it because I quite like it. And I'm going to grab some more marshmallow. So if your marshmallow isn't hot enough, it will harden and not stretch out as easy as this will. But obviously careful it's not too hot before you do this. So one more time. So careful not to touch the marshmallow once it's already on, because you're at risk of lifting up some buttercream. That is looking wicked. I have kind of forgotten about the very bottom, so I'm going to do one more and focus on the bottom of the cake. I've seen this technique being done on cupcakes too. That looks amazing. And to be honest, you don't need much more after you've done this. The cobwebs got me. I love that. I think it's so effective, and look at me standing with my sticky hands. So I'm gonna go in with my hot water, which feels very nice to do. And you can see the marshmallow comes off really easily. So I would go in with your hands rather than gloves, but of course you can do gloves if you want. There, all clean. So it's actually not that messy if you're prepared. The only thing with this is that you can't really do much more with the leftover marshmallows, so you can either decorate another cake, but they won't go back to a normal marshmallow. So I would just soak the bowl and get rid of it. But what I'm going to do is prepare my other decorations and then finish off the cake. So to finish off my Halloween cobweb cake, what I've done is actually made a couple of decorations out of meringue. So this is just my normal meringue recipe. And what I've done is pipe little circles, and they're going to be little eyes that are poking through the cobwebs. And I've also piped out some bone shape. So you can see when it comes to meringue, you can pretty much pipe any sort of shape and get a nice solid decoration for a cake. So I'm going to dot these around the cake and then finish it off with some edible soil, which is my cake offcuts because I made a chocolate cake. So really simple decorations, and it's going to look amazing once it's complete. So what I'm going to start off with is attaching these eyes. So I'm going to go in between the gaps. Now the buttercream is still firm, but it's soft enough for me to just attach the meringue straight to without any extra buttercream. And then on top of the eyes, I'm going to create the pupils with some leftover buttercream from before. So for those who watched my cartoon cake recently, I did say at the end that I wanted to put eyes on more of my cakes, so here we go. And then on the top, I kind of want to create this like graveyard kind of scene. So I'm going to add some more buttercream so my cake crumbs can stick to it. And maybe I'll do some at the bottom as well. And then I can get some of these meringue bones and kind of put them on top of the soil and sticking out to really create a Halloween or spooky scene. So there we go, a really simple but effective way to decorate a Halloween cake. Just to finish it off, and I haven't done this in a while, but because Halloween has some sort of magical aspect to it, I'm going to, of course, add some edible glitter all over the cake, just to bring it to life that little bit, which is a bit ironic because I've just created a graveyard. There we go. I hope you enjoyed it. Please try it out, even if it's just the cobweb effect, whether it's on a ready-made cake, some cupcakes, you can maybe do it over biscuits. It is such an easy way to create a spooky looking cake. So if you do try it out, please tag me at Georgia's Cakes. Head over to my channel for more creations and check out my pumpkin cake from last week as well. Hope you have a happy Halloween and see you very soon.